Chapter 9. Good Intentions. The following morning I wanted to avoid Sarah and any potential arguments at all costs. I didn't have the energy nor the patience to attempt either, so I got out of bed as early as I could, trying in earnest not to wake Samuel. Waiting for my eyes adjust to the dark, I quietly tapped my surroundings, so I didn't bump into anything as I made my way to the ensuite. A quick freshen up and a change of clothes before tiptoeing my way out of our bedroom, down the landing, and slipping gently downstairs. I didn't dare go into the kitchen in case Sarah was in there. I darted into the office, snatched Andrew Faraday's laptop, phone, and the drive I had transferred most of the files to the previous night, and snuck out the front door. The security lights failed to flash on as the sunrise was already half lighting up the sky. I unlocked the car and clambered in. Placing all my belongings, including the laptop and phone, on the passenger seat beside me, I took a moment to appreciate the beautiful surroundings, just as I did every morning when leaving Samuel's home. Then I sped off. And where I would normally go on a day like this when I wanted to confide in someone was Casey's place. Instead, I drove to the hospital. Even if she couldn't see me, I was certain she would be able to hear me, and perhaps, just perhaps, it would get her to wake up. It would also help me understand the folders I had uncovered and was trying to make sense of. I headed straight to her ward, passing the nurses on reception who told me I was fine to go in. I had all the expectations in the world to turn up at the hospital that morning, walk into Casey's room, and expect her to be back to normal, sitting up in bed and drinking a cup of tea. But she wasn't. I could feel the disappointment in my face instantly as I peered through the thin window of her door. There was no sign of Hunter, which was strange as I knew he had been by her bedside night and day. Casey was just a lifeless body connected to multiple tubes, cables, and bleeping machines. This was not how she should be. "Oh, honey, I am so sorry," I said aloud as I pushed the door open and sat in the chair beside her bed, gently touching her hand. The room was silent. Not a sound could be heard except for the clicking and whirring of the ventilator next to me. "I cannot believe you are being so selfish and not waking up to listen to me. I need you, Casey. I have so much to moan to you about." I half giggled to myself as I continued to keep talking to her, as if she could hear me. I somehow felt like I was helping Casey by sitting next to her, hoping that at any moment she would open her eyes and start talking away like the good old times. But she didn't. She lay lifeless instead. I opened my bag and retrieved Andrew Faraday's mobile phone. I had left it charging overnight, so it had plenty of battery. I carefully connected the cable from my laptop to the device and started to load the monitoring software. This particular piece of software would allow me to run and download all the activity on his phone for the past 90 days. The central processing unit on a phone automatically captured everything, including calls, messages, screen activity, web browsing history, and application downloads, all without the user being aware. Even if data had been deleted, I would be able to recover it. In fact, I was more interested in the things he had deleted, as this meant they could potentially be clues as to what was going on. Had he been trying to hide something? Was there something happening that Jenny wasn't aware of? Balancing my laptop and his phone on the small table beside my cramped hospital chair, I reached into my bag and pulled out a chocolate cereal bar. If Casey would only open her eyes now to me having breakfast next to her. How was it possible that my best friend was in this situation? Sarah. It was all Sarah's fault. I clicked on the report filters and then on run to produce the data, leaving the software to work its magic. It began listing line after line of data into a spreadsheet, filtered by day and time, followed by all the associated information. Next was the long process of scanning through everything and finding anything slightly unusual to investigate. "There you go, lovely. Help yourself." The nurse opened the door and passed me a hot container of coffee and a cup with some milk cartons, sugar sachets, and a stirrer. "Apologies. Hunter went for a quick shower, so I promised him I would keep checking in. But as you two are here, I will leave you to it." She made it sound like Casey and I were in an in-depth conversation, and then left with a warm smile. I poured myself a coffee and let its sour taste slowly drain down my throat, in an attempt to waken my senses and kick my brain into attention, especially after the chaos of the previous night. I used my fingernail to scan the screen item by item. I had the ability to scan back several months, but when someone was so active on their phone, it could be a lot of information, and any small piece of information I missed could be the needle in the haystack that I was looking for. Without knowing who Andrew truly was, I had to rely on the software to help me with anomalies. It used artificial intelligence to work out trends and make correlations from events. Had he called the same person at the same time every day? Had he always called UK numbers, then suddenly started calling internationally? Had there been a new number he was messaging frequently? Banks used the same software to detect fraudulent activity, quite useful when trying to track something unusual. 88 days, about 3 months ago, the same number had called Andrew 15 times in one afternoon. I cross-checked it with his contacts list, and it was his father, so that was discounted. It was coupled with 6 messages and 5 voicemails, also from his father, but none of which gave anything away. "Andrew, please call me, we really need to talk," were the contents of most of the voicemails from his father. No clues in that whatsoever. I had learned quite quickly in this role to use evidence-based analysis. In the early days, I would jump to conclusions too soon, without anything meaningful to back it up. Now, I thought carefully and logically and tried to apply sense and reasoning. After all, it was potentially someone irrational committing these actions. There were quite a few text messages in a different language and symbols, which I soon managed to copy into a browser and realised they were in Greek. The same symbols and language I had detected on his laptop the previous night when downloading the files. Now, why would Andrew send and receive messages in Greek? Strange. I took a few moments to translate all those, but again, nothing substantial. Just general communication from Nicholas asking his son to talk, and very blunt, unengaging answers from Andrew by return. If anything, this case was frustrating. I felt that I was missing something huge, and there appeared to be so much under the surface that was going on. Just no evidence to give me a lead. The second thing I found strange was Andrew's browsing activity. The software would flag potentially harmful or sensitive subjects, and the days following this flurry of calls from his father had sparked search terms including suicide, hereditary diseases, and genome editing. The first term made sense, especially after what had happened to Andrew. The second I could understand, as that was why he had lost his mother in the first place, but genome editing, that wasn't a search term or subject I was familiar with. I took to the internet again to work out what I was dealing with here and entered the search term. Genome editing, also known as gene editing, is a type of genetic engineering that allows scientists to alter an organism's DNA. It involves adding, removing, or modifying DNA sequences in a cell or organism's genome. Now I was hooked. Why on earth had Andrew been searching for this? I reverted back to the laptop and reopened the files and folders that had been encrypted. The first main file had 8 subfolders. The first symbol I copied and pasted into the translator was alpha, and the first letter of the Greek alphabet. The second symbol, beta, was for beta, the second letter, and it mapped the same for the remaining 6 folders. Gamma for gamma, delta delta, epsilon epsilon, zeta zeta, eta eta, and theta theta. I needed Jenny to come back to me so I could understand what the Greek connection was. I also needed to gain access to the folders, although I now knew that they were named A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H. I still had no idea of the contents. I had pictures, but the text and documents needed decrypting. I had a software tool that enabled me to break the encryption without the original security password, but could sometimes take a while to do. A folder at a time, I right-clicked at the top right of the screen and began running the prompts. It got to work, the icon in the middle of the screen beginning to pulse like a timer. There was a rap at the door, which startled me. I looked up to see Hunter through the thin door window. He smiled as he saw me. He seemed so much better than he had the previous day. Opening the door quietly, he took a step in. "Hey, Esme," he whispered. "You seemed stuck in something captivating, so didn't want to make you jump." He walked over and gave me a kiss on the top of my ruffled hair. It's okay. You startled me, I chuckled. Any movement? He asked, looking so much more positive than he had the day before. Nope. I shook my head. No movement at all, unfortunately. I did check with the night nurses as they were leaving this morning, but thought something miraculous may have happened whilst I was gone briefly. He leant against the bed and held Casey's petite hand. You look a little better than yesterday, but you still look tired, Hunter. I peered at the dark circles under his eyes. Have you managed to get much rest? I have tried to sleep, he replied, but I just can't. Every time I close my eyes, I feel like she is slipping further away, and I'm jinxing her waking up. Crazy, huh? Why is that crazy? I smiled at him. You've always had a soft spot for Casey. Everyone knows that. She will be out, and you two can be back together again before you know it. You're just worried you will lose her. That's completely normal. You really should get a little sleep, though. I'm here. Why don't you get some now? I promise to come and get you if anything changes. I promise. We'll see, he said, and backed away from the bed to join me. How's the case going, anyway? Any developments? I'm sorry about Cordelia Jones. Are you going to continue with it now that she's... I feel like I owe it to her, I replied. Don't you think her accident was suspicious? Absolutely, he bit straight back. The team are conducting all the investigations at the moment. There were a few things about the accident that didn't add up, but most of the evidence is still in the lab, so I will know more in the coming days. And I took a moment to pause and think. There was one thing, Hunter. There was a familiar logo that I recognised from the picture in the article, but I can't think where from. I quickly flicked through the photographs on my phone and showed him, but he was clueless. Sorry, no, I don't recognise it. Hunter shook his head. The room turned eerily quiet. I have Andrew's laptop and mobile. The trouble is a lot of the files and folders are in Greek, so I'm working on decrypting them as we speak. I don't understand the connection, but I also don't understand why all the folders are encrypted, unless it was highly sensitive and confidential information. So I'm now intrigued as to what they contain. I tried to spin a positive approach to what we knew so far. Interesting. Hunter seemed semi-bothered and that his mind was elsewhere. Hang on a minute, did you say Andrew and Nicholas Faraday? Uh-huh, I nodded. Aren't they both Greek names? Maybe not Faraday, but definitely their first names. Maybe they are a Greek family? Ah, okay, I'll have a look into their middle names and their family tree. I noted this down to research. Any information on Nicholas Faraday from the station? I asked. Sorry, Esme. Hunter suddenly snapped back into reality. I completely forgot to tell you. There have been so many things in my head of late. They let Nicholas Faraday go yesterday. Christ, Hunter. And you didn't think to say anything? I popped. Sorry, so many things happening at once. He looked shocked that I had called him out. Sorry, I didn't mean to lose my patience then. Why did they let him go? I thought he had been identified as stalking all those women. I have been researching, and there are a lot of suspect articles that mention him too. Well, as it turns out, 2 new women had come forward saying he had been following them, but he was in custody with us at the same time, and the 2 times before, he had an alibi as well as multiple witnesses for him being there. The other strange thing is that these women keep saying that he is following them, but there is no threatening behaviour. He doesn't speak to them, approach them, or take pictures. The man just sits down and watches the children. The officers have been placed on alert to keep an eye on Mr. Faraday, so that they can monitor his movements and make the necessary arrests if needed. Hunter shrugged. One person can't be in 2 places at the same time, right? And his house? Did they search his property? Yes, but nothing. Not a single thing that would point to children, images, or anything that would explain his behaviour, or why Andrew was so interested in those young girls either. I don't get it. I was really hoping they would find something. Strange. I frowned, taking it all in, placing my laptop on the small table next to me to work its magic, whilst I rested back in the chair and continued the conversation with Hunter instead. "Well, this looks like a very serious conversation, my lovelies," the on-duty nurse said as she appeared in the doorway. "And is young Casey part of the discussion?" She smiled. "As always. And how are you, Stacey?" Hunter was on first-name terms with most of the nurses now. "Wonderful, as always, Hunter. Thank you for asking." She smiled in both our directions. "Well, I just wanted to let you know that I have just started my shift for the next 12 hours. So if you need anything, I'll just be on the main desk." "Thanks, Stacey." She left the room. Hunter stood against the wall, holding himself steady with his arms and crossing his feet. "Hunter?" I returned back to the original conversation. "Uh-huh." He waited for me to continue. "Can you get me the names and contact details of the other women who made complaints against Nicholas Faraday, please? I have to speak to them." I squinted to appear more desperate than normal. "You know I shouldn't," Hunter replied. "You shouldn't, but you could." I smiled. I knew Hunter couldn't resist me when I really wanted something. Even when we were children, I would keep on and on until he backed down. Not a single thing had changed since then. "I'll see what I can do," Hunter said. "And Sarah? Any news on her? I can't believe Samuel hasn't managed to find her yet. Where is she lurking in the sewers somewhere?" I swallowed heavily. I didn't want to tell Hunter that she had in fact turned up on our doorstep the previous night and stayed at his house, and that Samuel had said he would speak to her today. It felt disrespectful, especially with me sat next to Casey in intensive care. I couldn't bring myself to tell Hunter the truth, so I lied like the bad human that I was. "I'm so sorry, I'm afraid not. Samuel said he was going to speak to Oscar today and find out where the hell she is. We will get to the bottom of it, I promise you." I felt terrible, but I also thought it was the best. Hunter collected his phone from his back pocket and held it in the palm of his hand. He frowned with confusion, but then replaced it. "The station?" I asked nosily. "Nope, Mum," he shrugged. Mum." "Uh-huh." Hunter nodded. "Is she okay?" We weren't the best at keeping in touch with our parents, not because we weren't close, but just because we had busy lives. They liked to travel and they had a lot of friends whom they did lots of nice things with. So their personal lives were so much more hectic since they had retired. I constantly felt guilty that I didn't speak to them nearly as much as I should do, but time just seemed to pass by so fast. I noted that I should really make more of an effort in the future. They hadn't even met Samuel yet. "She's fine. They are both all good. Mum wanted to pop over to see us. She heard about Casey and thought it would be nice to, He fidgeted slightly as if trying to hide something, just as I had moments before. "Help out, I guess." "Oh," I added, "so I said they could stay at mine for a bit?" Hunter looked over at me to test my reaction. "Stay at yours? For how long?" I panicked. I'm not sure why, but I did. "I don't know. A week or two, maybe?" "That's okay, isn't it?" he asked. "Well, sure. It's your apartment, not mine. It's just I wasn't sure what I was getting at. I just haven't seen them for ages, that's all." "That's good. Then you can spend a little time with them too. I'm sure they would love to meet Samuel." I was sure they would. There was an awkward silence. "Listen, Hunter, I'm just going to pop to the ladies. Do you need anything?" "Nah, thanks. I'm all good." "Okay, I'll be back in 10. I left the room with a sigh of relief. I loved my parents to bits, but they could be, well, somewhat judgmental. I deliberately hadn't introduced them to Samuel yet for fear of what they might say, especially when they'd learned that he was wealthy and charming and smart and... The list went on. After visiting the rather sterile-smelling toilets, I wandered down the corridor and joined the queue for the hospital restaurant. It was very busy, so I decided to do a bit of research while I waited. There were 2 things on my to-do list for today. The first was to get in touch with Cordelia's husband, Rupert Jones. I wanted to give him a bit of time to come to terms with her passing, but at the same time, I equally needed to speak to him about the case, offer my condolences, and if it wasn't too insensitive of me, I had more questions that I desperately needed answers to. I now feared that the only people who would know would be Cordelia Jones and Andrew Faraday. I couldn't call him from the hospital, though. The signal wasn't great, and it was far too busy to be able to concentrate. The second priority on my list was Nicholas Faraday. I needed to understand what his part in all of this was, and why he also had an obsession for those young girls. I felt this was easier to start, given my current location. He, however, was still alive. The queue moved forwards ever so slightly. The young man serving everyone appeared to be on his own, overworked and very stressed, making mistakes at every which way he turned. The couple at the front were tutting and waving their hands at what looked like an incorrect order. I began searching on my phone. Nicholas Faraday. It took less than a minute to return a list of results. Nicholas Faraday, sports coach for a youth football club. I clicked on the image. Nope, that wasn't him. Nicholas Faraday, history teacher at a primary school in Ireland. Well, that definitely wasn't him. Far too young, but very attractive nonetheless. Then finally, Nicholas Faraday, director at a leading IVF clinic. I clicked on his profile to see what I had. Uncanny, I thought as I tilted my head to one side. I could clearly see the resemblance between Andrew and his father. I scrolled down to read his biography. The smell from the restaurant's food in the background was making me hungry. I could see open stainless steel trays of breakfast items such as eggs, bacon, beans, mushrooms and hash browns sitting there, patiently waiting to be claimed, mixed with the aroma of coffee beans being brewed in the large coffee machines on the other side of the counter. I ignored the complaints ahead of me and carried on with my Nicholas Faraday searches. Fertility complaints quashed amid fears that Dr. Faraday withdraws from leading charity. Now that seems interesting. Let's have a read of this. But before I did so, I looked at all the other search returns. Dr. Nicholas Faraday, Director and Research Director at the Fincham IVF Clinic in London, has received numerous complaints that medical and genetic studies have been unethical and are under investigation. That also sounded interesting. Faraday, well known for his leading clinical trials, medical research and studies, has been at the centre of investigations this week after the Fincham practice received numerous complaints into cases of unethical behaviour. Alongside him, Dr. Christopher Davies, co-director of the clinic, has handed in his resignation and is also undergoing investigations. Dr. Faraday, what were you involved in, I wondered. I found myself shaking my head as I read the article descriptions. The practice has been advised to suspend inductions for any new patients until the matter has been concluded. It looked like there was more to Nicholas Faraday than met the eye. I wondered if any of this had anything to do with his son. I decided to click off this and back to the previous article instead. Dr. Christopher Davies, co-director of the Fincham IVF Clinic in London, dies tragically at his home. My eyes widened. In the early hours of yesterday morning, on September 5th, 2018, the body of Dr. Davies was found at his luxury property in central London. He was well known in the medical field for his research, accreditations and experience with genetics, and had until recently won the Best UK Clinic for success rates relating to in vitro fertilisation. A full investigation is underway, but at this time it is not believed to be under suspicious circumstances. A tap on my shoulder startled me and I looked up. "Excuse me, madam, it's your turn next." The elderly lady behind me apologised. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to startle you." "I'm so sorry, I was in a world of my own." I smiled politely and ordered my coffee from the young man on the till. He looked relieved not to have a complicated order, nor someone losing their patience with him. I had a couple of more minutes left while he was making my coffee before heading back to Hunter. Dr. Nicholas Faraday, Greek clinical study shut down after ethical board investigation. That's when it hit me like a steam train, and I wanted to run back to the ward. Something finally made sense. I zoomed in on the image of the man featured in the article. The emblem on his polo shirt was the same logo I had seen from the Cordelia Jones crash scene. The Fincham IVF Clinic logo. Not only this, but the names also featured in the article sent chilling sensations down my entire body. New clinical studies surrounding genetics and a leading scientist was today shut down after a complaint had been submitted to the British Society for Genetic Medicine by a previous patient at the clinic. Ms. Cordelia Jones stated that she had grave concerns following procedures there back in 2016 and 2017, and a full investigation into the clinic needed to take place. Why on earth had Cordelia Jones not told me this in the first place? That she knew who Dr. Nicholas Faraday was? Why would she conceal such substantial information? Something that would have saved so much time, and now I would never know unless I could get a hold of Rupert Jones.